This is Inside Town Hall, a behind-the-scenes look at city government and the issues affecting you and your family.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Inside Town Hall. I'm your host, Madeline Shields, and it's that time again when we invite several city councilors in to discuss the latest topics of what's going on in Sioux Falls. And joining me is Michelle Erpenbach. We have Rick Kiley and Greg Neitzert. Thanks for joining me for Inside Town Hall. Thank you. Let's get started right away with the 2018 to 2022 capital program. What is this? The mayor has recommended this, and it includes a lot of items. Who wants to start?
Well, it certainly does include a lot of items. It is a large city. Our small city has become a large city now, so it does require quite a budget to run that as well, too. But the capital improvement plan, it's a 5-year plan, and it deals with mostly our infrastructure throughout the city, and it does include other capital projects to equipment, most police cars, fire engines, things of that nature. And this year, because of our declining tax revenues, it's going to be even more challenging than it has been in previous years. So the mayor did present, I thought, a very reasonable budget, and we're just really focusing on the basics for the next year and the next 5 years as we look forward. So, and I think we're fortunate that we're in a good position as a city, that we do have a lot of the nice amenities that maybe other communities do not have. So we're probably in a little better position to put some projects on the back burner than others, and then focus on the streets and utilities, which the mayor is basically shifting the primary focus to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting to talk about declining sales tax revenues. That's the reason that we're kind of doing the belt tightening. But I have to more and more have conversations with people about that idea that we aren't going in the hole in terms of sales tax revenue yet.
Correct.
But the growth of sales taxes is dramatically declining. So you can see that the line still goes up, but it's going up at a slower and slower rate. So it's important to talk about those ideas of keeping the key pieces of our city maintained and built the way that we need it to be. But then we also have to talk about why are we in this position, and make sure that because it's a 5-year plan. We got to be, as a city council and as a community, really thinking ahead farther than just 2018.
Is this 5-year plan always reevaluated every year? Mm-hmm. So then it extends it by 1 year, it just keeps moving on. But right. You look at the current budget for the year as well as the 5-year plan.
Right. Essentially, as a city council, we'll approve or make changes to and approve 1 year only. And then we kind of look at those ensuing 4 years after that, but then next year's council will say, all right, 2019, we'll vote on that. So there's room for wiggling, but it's kind of an overall plan, kind of an umbrella to kind of look through.
Well, if we go back to the 2008, when we had the recession and it was a downturn, Sioux Falls skated through that pretty much. We did not feel the housing issues that other parts of the country did, as well as unemployment. But now here we are, many years later, and we're starting with the sales tax lower growth, but not. Would you call it stagnant?
It's going to be stagnant soon.
It's starting to move that way. Last year was in about 4% ahead of what it had been. At this time, anyway, it was about 4%, maybe 3.8% ahead of what it had been the previous year. So that's 3.8% of growth above the previous year. So as Councilor Erpenbach had mentioned, just because our sales tax revenues are declining, that doesn't mean that we're actually collecting less. We are. But I think the reason the City of Sioux Falls, and that 2008 dates back to before I was on the council, or any of us for that matter, but fortunately we had a mayor at that time that recognized that we needed to tighten our belts and adjust the budgets accordingly, and we certainly have had governors in the state doing the same as well too. So we're maybe in a little better position, and then plus it's always been this council's priority to make sure that we have at least 25% of our annual budget in reserves so that we have it for emergency type situations. I don't know that I would classify this as an emergency, however. This is becoming the new norm. An emergency is something like the ice storm, or if you had a catastrophic tornado event like Spencer, South Dakota did years ago. So you just have to plan accordingly.
Yeah, it's just an adjustment. We're used to 3-4%, maybe higher sales tax growth. We're at 1.6% now, so it's been decelerating. As Councilor Erpenbach pointed out, we are not declining. It's not less than what it used to be, but the growth is slower than it had been, so we just have to adjust, and the 5-year plan just has to be modified to essentially come down to that rate of growth. And I think the mayor and the administration have presented a very good budget that sticks to the basics and does a very good job of taking care of the things we need to take care of.
Do we know how we compare to cities like Omaha or Fargo or Minneapolis with their growth or for sales tax?
One of the things that it always crosses my mind when we talk about sales tax is it's one of those, it's a regressive tax in many ways, and we have to be really careful about what we rely on. We are not the only state in the nation that relies on sales tax to the level that we do. So I don't have specific numbers, maybe you guys do, but we can compare ourselves to the Omahas and Des Moines of the world, the Minneapolis, that they are more focused on sales tax than other areas are. Des Moines in particular, we were talking earlier today about the governor of Iowa talking about sales tax in Iowa and talking about the ag economy in specific. So it's not, the sales tax piece is a huge part of it, but if the ag economy is in trouble, sales tax is going right with it. And so we're dealing with that as well. And so we're kind of watching Iowa as a model because they have that same issue. So yes, absolutely. We have to look at our neighbors and see how they're doing it, but we have to figure out too, I think, and this is maybe my own soapbox for today, is we got to figure out a different way to fund city government as much as anything. It can't just be on that sales tax, because we keep coming back to that idea of internet sales and the ag economy. How do we then find a stable way to fund city government? And I'm not sure that we're there. And this is one of those times to have those conversations about it,
No, and unfortunately, it could, as we mentioned earlier, could continue to decline to the point where it's flat, or maybe we aren't increasing at all. In reality, our population is increasing at a rate greater than what our sales tax revenue now is. So even though our sales tax revenue has increased by 1.6%, we're still kind of behind the 8 ball because our population is increasing at a rate greater than that. So that means that the demand for providing services to those additional citizens increases right along with it. Fortunately, a plan was put into place for 2017 to identify particular areas where we could cut. Each department was given a directive to identify areas where you could cut as much as 5% of your budget as needed, as tax revenues do continue to decline. So the mayor and the administration, they've been in a good position to do that, and I know his goal is the same as ours, and that is to have a balanced budget.
Absolutely. The big thing to remember is that this does not occur in a vacuum. The entire state is facing this. This is not just a Sioux Falls problem, and as Michelle intimated, the big issue is with sales tax. It's the factors that affect it are largely out of our control. We really can't affect the ag economy. We can't really, the online sales, it's a tough one. We can encourage people to shop local, but it's something that we really can't control, and it's a problem nationwide. As far as the important thing also to remember, though, is that much of our infrastructure is served by enterprise funds, and that comes from user fees. Our sewer, our water, so those are stable, and that's important. Those aren't affected, but things such as our roads and our parks are funded by sales tax, and so those can be affected.
For city dwellers, a lot of people are 1 or 2 generations removed from the farm now. And so a lot of people don't, when you say Sioux Falls is affected by the ag economy. I think people are surprised by that. They think, well, why? Why do we need that? But if farmers aren't coming to town to spend money, that's what is hurting us. Is that what you're implying?
Absolutely. And it could continue to get worse because of the potential for drought that's spreading across the Midwest now. We've been fortunate in our immediate area to get some timely rainfalls, but I think the last few days have indicated that we can't count on that happening throughout the summer. And so it could become worse as it affects the farmers and their operations. Then obviously they have to cut back, and a lot of that would be on items that they determine is not essential to their operation. And so some of the items that they'd be purchasing here in the city. And the City of Sioux Falls is a shopping mecca for this particular area. And so it would have that impact.
I made a joke, because I learned this lesson not that long ago. I made a joke about everybody should be buying tractors, right? Because won't that help our sales tax? And the response was, well, number one, that's not funny. But number two is, if I buy a tractor here in Sioux Falls, I go to an implement dealer here and I sign the contract, I buy the tractor, they're going to deliver it to me on my farm in XYZ County somewhere else, and that's where I'm going to pay the sales tax.
Right.
So it isn't about the tractors or the implements. It is about food and gas and groceries and clothing, and I need a new washer dryer, those kinds of things. Those are the sales tax things we're talking about. The ag economy is hurting, Sioux Falls is hurting.
And you talked a little bit about putting some of the things to the back burner, that we have the flexibility to do that. What can we expect? Would it be maybe this road may not be repaired or rebuilt and maybe just repaired? What are we looking at?
You know about one specifically,
Yes.
Greg. Talk about the ones you were talking about.
Yeah, so some road projects may be pushed back maybe a year. TLS Road is one road, however, that is being accelerated. We were going to reconstruct it from 41st to 26th Street. It's going to be reconstructed from 41st all the way to 12th Street and widened into a 4-lane arterial with a median. The people in my district are incredibly excited about that. The road is deteriorating, but more importantly, and the reason that we're doing it is because the development out there has really, really accelerated. There's a lot of houses popping up, there's a lot of development, so it's time to do it. So the administration has prioritized that. That's really important. And so, but there's other projects that, they're not quite so critical. We can wait a year, so we can just shift things back a little bit. We can push a fire station back one more year, things like that, where we can just make little adjustments where we can get the job done and it'll just push things back a little bit.
But then you also make the point that when something needs to be done, that there's also that flexibility to get done the immediate needs as well.
Absolutely. All of the roads, we have a list. We have a list of priorities, and they're going right down the list. And whichever way sales tax money goes, we just go down the list, and we'll put them in as we can do them.
We may not be able to go down that list as rapidly as what we had thought 2 years ago, but we will continue to tackle those problems. And I do also want to say that we have made commitments to other projects as well, especially Americans with Disability Act requirements with some of our curb cutouts and sidewalks and things of that nature. We will continue to make the improvements as we are obligated to do. We've also obligated funding for the Levitt Pavilion, which will actually start construction next year in 2018 and then be available for the citizens of Sioux Falls in 2019, as well as other projects too. So we're not cutting everything out, but we are prioritizing.
We have in our notes here, the debt is being managed in a very prudent manner. Can we talk a little bit about debt management? Can that be changed or altered a little bit to help with the budget as well?
A lot of our debt, well, obviously we've done a couple of big projects lately, but those are all scheduled to pay off in a timely manner. But a lot of our debt, and Councilor Neisert referred to it earlier, is based in those enterprise projects, the enterprise programs, so that when we build new sewer pipes, we do take out a loan to get that done. And then it's paid back through those user fees that, you're paying your water bill, part of that goes to pay that debt. So when we look, as a council, when we look at those debt numbers, we have to take that into account as well, that a lot of those are programmed to pay themselves off in an almost automatic way because it comes through user fees. The other piece of it, though, is that we tend to, when we're doing projects like that, we use really low interest rate loans from the state SRF funds, and I'm not going to remember what SRF stands for, but there are those resource projects that we can do. So we do those really low interest. We're able to, again, improve quality of life and take care of things that really need to happen in terms of infrastructure. But then that debt then is programmed, and it's not a very high interest rate, so it's pretty amazing to work that way.
And our debt compared to other cities in the Midwest is very favorable. In fact, we're on the bottom of the list, and this is a case where it's good to be on the bottom of the list. In fact, when I ran for my city council seat a little over 3 years ago, I think we were actually above Rapid City. Rapid City had a little better debt per capita than what we did, but now we've actually gone down below Rapid City, so we compare very favorable to Rapid City and to Sioux City and to Lincoln, Nebraska, and Omaha, Nebraska, and Des Moines and Rochester, other communities around us. So we are managing the debt, and I'm sure people are concerned about that, but that is something that we, as well as the administration, have our eye on that.
Yeah, when we talk about balancing the budget, it includes those debt payments, that we are making those debt payments in the way that we're obligated to make them inside that balanced budget. So it's not like we put a bunch of stuff on a credit card and we're not going to pay it off. It doesn't work that way.
And I'd like to emphasize again, without dipping into our reserves.
Yep.
Because this is the new norm, and we have to learn to live within this climate.
Sure. Now, which budget year are we in? Have you adopted the 2018 budget, or that's when do you start looking at the 2018 budget? And
Just getting started now.
just getting started.
July we start to
Yes.
kind of see it ahead of time, and then in August you'll see us go into budget hearings and working sessions. We'll start looking at it line by line, and going through it that way.
And that's usually adopted in the fall. Is that correct?
Late September.
September, October timeframe, and the mayor will give his operations budget address on July 18th. And then we will have sessions where the different departments will report to us on August 1st, August 8th, and August 15th, held in Carnegie in place of our normal informational session. And then after that, we'll schedule work sessions if necessary, as necessary.
And can people find out about what's in the budget? They can go online to siouxfalls.org. Can they attend those budget meetings at Carnegie as well? Those are open.
They're all online. You can watch them on TV on CityLink. You can go to the city finance page and you can click on capital improvement program, and you can look at the 2018 to 2022 CIP program. It's a big book, and the operating budget, when it goes online in a couple weeks, you can go take a look at that too and give us any of your comments.
So people who love numbers, it's all online for you.
There you go.
There's some people who love numbers, not me, but it's out there. So you can go ahead and look at it and give your input if you want. Well, we have a lot to talk about. Let's move on to one more topic before we take a break. The Annexation Task Force. We've been talking about how the city continues to grow and grow and grow, and that means annexing properties that were not in the city limits before, but may soon be. Let's talk about that task force and who's serving on it and what are they doing right now.
Well, I have the privilege of chairing the task force, and we have two other counselors, Councilor Neitzer and Councilor Selberg, on the task force, and then we have 4 private citizens who have either been voluntarily annexed or have petitioned to be annexed, or the potential exists that they might be annexed. And we will be preparing for our 5th meeting this coming Monday, but it is a task that is truly challenging, and it's a topic that has been addressed previously, and it's most likely going to be addressed even more in the future when we're done. But the task force was addressed to make recommendations about the process. And I want to emphasize the task force was not formed to identify who we're annexing next. It's not about annexing any individual property. It's not about annexing any individual subdivision. We're just trying to identify a process and provide the administration with more information on how to proceed with annexations, and also in an effort to avoid creating more pockets of unannexed land within the city of Sioux Falls. So it's been a long process, and we'll have at least a couple more meetings before we conclude.
Yeah, and we have approximately 62 pockets in the city of Sioux Falls. A pocket is essentially an area, a property or a set of properties that have not been annexed that are surrounded by the city limits. And so what we're looking to do is, how can we address those? Should we annex them? Under what conditions? Overarching goals. And again, it's not about an individual property. And the big challenge with this is that they're all very unique. You have everything from a small property with a farmhouse up to a very large subdivision, a rural subdivision with roads and septic tanks and a very unique character. So it's very hard to come up with a one-size-fits-all strategy. So it's gonna be quite a challenge. But I think we'll come up with some guidelines that will help to guide the way as to how we should proceed with annexation and under what conditions.
So this task force, does it set policy, or will it be an ordinance, or going forward on how to approach areas that are outside city limits? What do you see as the outcome of the task force and moving forward?
That's a great question. And in fact, that was the next topic I wanted to address, because we will not set policy. This task force will be presenting recommendations that will then go to the full city council. The city council is the only body, the only board that has the capability, the ability to set policy for the citizens of Sioux Falls. And so the task force will be hopefully in the near future coming up with recommendations that we can bring forward to the city council, and it'll be up to the city council to adopt them and give further guidance to especially our planning and zoning individuals.
Has it gotten more difficult as Sioux Falls grows? Because this can't be a new topic for cities. I mean, as cities grow, they're going to be swallowed up. You know, rural developments are going in farmland. Has it become increasingly more difficult as people do the urban sprawl? Is that what we're seeing?
To a certain extent, yeah, and I'm not on the annexation task force, but one of the best examples of that, and nothing against this particular development, but the Orchard Heights area was annexed as one of those pockets. It originally was annexed in with all of the extra exceptions, because we're special and it's beautiful, it is, but they didn't have curb and gutter, and they didn't have some of the things that we need in terms of plowing snow properly, and we had flooding issues, we had ditch issues, all kinds of things that happened there because we didn't bring them in at that time, didn't bring them in under the same rules as everyone else. So it starts to create issues. And so that's part of it, is it's a fairness issue, not just for those folks who live in those particular developments that we're talking about, but it's fairness to the rest of the city as well. Mm-hmm. That if it's more expensive for us as a city, you know, we live together and we pay our taxes together, if it's more expensive for us to plow your street because you thought you were special, that's not fair to the rest of us. But it's also not fair to them if we make it difficult for them to come in. So I commend these guys. They're doing a great job in terms of dealing with that really difficult issue. It's pretty heated, and the conversations have been pretty interesting.
Well, I'm a lifelong resident of the city, so I was born and raised just south of Augustana University campus, and at that time we were on the very edge of the city. In fact, when I went to kindergarten at South Sioux Elementary, I used to have to cross 41st Street to get to the school, and at that time 41st Street was basically a county highway with ditches on either side. So I'm walking through the ditch, over the road, through another ditch, and on to school. So never did I envision the city growing at the rate, because we have more than doubled in my lifetime, and we're not really slowing down. As I think we're identified nationwide by more and more organizations and publications, the good things that we have going here in the city, we're likely to see more individuals uproot themselves and moved to this particular area to enjoy what we have. And so that's great, but it does have a negative impact, or what can be perceived as a negative impact by the surrounding subdivisions that had no idea that in some point in time we would basically engulf them with the growth of our city. But that's happening, and it happened earlier too, but it's just happening maybe at a greater extent right now.
So in the next couple of months, you think the City Council will be presented with this information?
We're hoping so.
Okay.
We're hoping that maybe in at least September we could move into an open house setting where we would invite people to come in a more informal setting and have discussions about the recommendations that we have decided upon, and then we would get together as a task force again to consider input that we've had from the townhouses, the open houses, and take them into consideration, make any adjustments that we feel are necessary and right to do, and then present to the full council.
Well, this has been a packed show, and right now we need to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about volunteering in the City of Sioux Falls. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Cook from Falls Community Health. This summer, remember to practice safe sun. Try to limit your time in the midday sun between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Wear a wide brim hat, sunglasses with UVA and UVB protection, and tightly woven loose-fitting clothes. Apply broad spectrum sunscreen liberally and reapply at least every 2 hours.
Well, welcome back to Inside Town Hall, where we have our guests, Michelle Erpenbach, Rick Kiley, and Greg Neitzert. Thanks for joining us for this roundtable discussion. Let's talk a little bit about how citizens of Sioux Falls can give back to the city.
Well, I had a great opportunity yesterday to meet with one of our local clergymen about the desire of his church members to give back to the City of Sioux Falls. And I thanked him for the opportunity, because it's not often that we encounter somebody that's asking, what can we do for you? It's more about what the city should be doing for them, or things that we haven't, in their eyes, done properly. So it was a great opportunity to identify different ways that they could volunteer. Within the city itself, the library has a number of programs that they could get involved in. There's a Food for All program that is held at Oakville View Library every day after school, and even at 3 o'clock on the summer. They have other, the need to take books to daycare centers, deliver books to people that are homebound. And so I had identified a number of different areas, and I would just encourage all citizens to get out and do what they can, because you receive much more than you actually give.
Then there are 2 key things that people can do on behalf of the city in terms of volunteering. These jobs aren't quite volunteer. We're paid a stipend, but we do have a city council election in 2018, and the candidates are needed for that. And we also have a variety of openings on citizen boards, advisory boards, and so all of those are listed on the website at siouxfalls.org.
And you can also go to the 211 Helpline Center. There is, if you just dial 211 and you say you want to volunteer, they have a list of organizations, agencies that could use your help and put you to work. And I think people are a little fearful because maybe they don't get to choose what they want to do. They don't want it to be like work, but there are enough organizations out there that you can pick what you want to do. There's enough jobs. I mean, where you work full-time, people can volunteer. Where I work at the banquet, they can volunteer any hours you want. And so
absolutely. There's many assisted living centers around the city. There's the hospice houses that are run through are different by our different hospitals. They are always in need of volunteers, active generations, plenty of opportunities out there.
Okay, well, that is our time for Inside Town Hall. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for watching. Check out siouxfalls.org for more information on what's going on in the city.